Today, we will review the Pre-Demolition Compliance Checklist form, which effective July 16, 2021, is one of the required documents for voluntary buyout or acquisition programs. A hyperlink to the Pre-Demolition Compliance Checklist can be found on the Texas General Land Office website at recovery.texas.gov. To locate the document, go to the local buyout and acquisition program page, which is linked below in the description section of this video. Scroll down to the Demolition Information section and click on the Pre-Demolition Compliance Checklist link. Once you click on the link, your computer will download the fillable document. Note, you will need Microsoft Word to view and edit the document. The Pre-Demolition Compliance Checklist must be completed by the subrecipient prior to demolition for each buyout or acquisition property that is acquired, to ensure that proper procedures are followed when demolishing a structure acquired through the local buyout or acquisition program. The checklist includes essential pre-demolition items such as environmental review, communication with owners, and inspections. In addition, the checklist includes several post-demolition requirements that the subrecipient should be aware of prior to demolition. The items that cannot be completed prior to demolition can be initialed once they are completed after demolition. For this video, we will use an example of a fictional applicant and location to explain the form. To begin, subrecipients should complete the project information section of the form with the information on the project and property. First, subrecipients should input their name. Next, subrecipients should input the contract number. This is the GLO contract number located in your contract. Then the subrecipient should input the physical address for the property that the checklist is being completed for, which will be demolished by the program. Next, in Section 1, Pre-Demolition, the subrecipient will ensure that all pre-demolition filing items have been completed and initial in the first column when the corresponding item has been complete. In number 1, the subrecipient should ensure that the case file is up to date for the address to be demolished and place this checklist in the file. The file should also indicate the national objective that will be met by the demolition. For the local buyout and acquisition program, the demolition will meet the same national objective as the buyout or acquisition. Next, the rows in number 2 correspond to the environmental review that must be completed prior to demolition of the property and placing the required environmental review documents on file prior to the start of demolition. In 2A, subrecipients should ensure that all historic preservation and environmental review documents, including the State Historic Preservation Office 106 clearance letter, are on file. In 2B, subrecipients should ensure the environmental review site-specific checklist, along with the GLO email of approval and tiered environmental review forms, are on file. In 2C, subrecipients should ensure if the State Historic Preservation Office review triggered additional action for historic properties, the letter of agreement is placed in the file and that the demolition is prepared to be compliant with the agreement. If there was no additional action, subrecipients can place NA. Then in number 3, subrecipients should photograph the site before the demolition. Subrecipients should ensure to photograph the front, back, left, and right sides of the home, in addition to all structures on the property to be demolished. Copies of the photos of the property should be placed in the property's right side file. In Section 2, Pre-Demolition Legal Documentation, subrecipients should review and check off that all legal documentation required for the demolition has been obtained and is filed. In checklist item number 4, the subrecipient should check if they have obtained right of entry and hold harmless agreement. For the local buyout and acquisition program, the subrecipients will own the property at the point of demolition, so the subrecipient can place NA in the checklist. However, subrecipients should ensure that all closing documentation and transfer of ownership is complete prior to demolition. In number 5, subrecipients should verify that the property to be demolished is the correct property that was bought out or acquired. They should ensure that the property description and legal boundaries are confirmed, all ownership documentation has been completed and the property is in the ownership of the subrecipient, and that the applicable deed restriction has been put in place. Copies of all documentation should be placed in the property's file. Once confirmation has been made and all files added to the file, the subrecipient can initial. In number 6, the subrecipient should check that they have notified the lien holder of the intent to demolish. However, in most local buyout and acquisition programs, the subrecipient should own the property at the time of the demolition, and the subrecipient can place an NA in the checklist. In number 7, the subrecipient should ensure that the required temporary CDBG DR signage and any local notification requirements for demolition are placed on the demolition site prior to beginning demolition. Subrecipients can initial once this step is complete. The third section is Pre-Demolition Building Official, where the subrecipient will ensure all inspections have been completed and the building is ready for demolition. In checklist item number 8, the subrecipient will conduct a building inspection to ensure the building is safe for entry to test for asbestos and lead. This inspection usually takes place during the environmental review, as the environmental review will inspect for these items. Subrecipients should confirm if they have been completed. In checklist item number 9, the subrecipient will initial if the public health inspection was required and was completed during the environmental review. If it was not required, it can be marked as NA. In checklist item number 10, the subrecipient should ensure that a fire inspection was conducted if needed during the environmental review. If a fire inspection was not needed, the subrecipient can place NA. In checklist item number 11, the subrecipient should ensure that all personal property has been removed from the property. The only items remaining on the property will be demolished and disposed of. Once the confirmation has been made, the subrecipient should initial the box. Next, in number 12, the subrecipient should ensure their demolition contractor has been properly procured and initiate their procedure for issuing the notice to proceed for demolition of that property. Once the authorization for notice to proceed has been requested, the subrecipient can initial. In the next section, Approval to proceed with demolition, the subrecipient should ensure that all approvals to proceed with a demolition have been granted. In number 13A, the subrecipient should ensure that the contract is executed with the contractor after an eligible procurement process. The subrecipient should ensure that the contract includes a timeline for demolition and all key requirements for the demolition. The subrecipient should then ensure that the contractor has received all key documents needed to fulfill their contract responsibilities, such as inspection information, SHPO issues, any environmental mitigation requirements, etc. After the demolition contract is clear on their consensual obligations, the subrecipient can initial this row. In number 13B, the subrecipient should authorize the notice to proceed for demolition. The notice to proceed should include the property address to be demolished that this checklist is being created for. If more than one address is included on the notice to proceed, the subrecipient should highlight the relevant address for the file. After inputting the notice to proceed in the file, the subrecipient can initial. The next section, Demolition Process Contractor. The subrecipient will complete before, during, and after demolition to ensure that the contractor is aware of and following all required processes. After each item is completed, the subrecipient can initial. In number 14, the subrecipient should initial that the subrecipient has verified the structure is unoccupied. In number 15, the subrecipient will verify that all easements and underground utilities were marked prior to demolition. Next, in number 16, the subrecipient will initial once all utility meters have been removed. In number 17, the subrecipient will ensure that all well, water, sewer, and septic lines are capped to the mains. In addition, all electric, gas, and propane tanks must be disconnected. Note, there is an additional required checklist, the Post-Demolition Checklist, that will go into more detail on the requirements for demolition and to ensure that they were completed. In number 18, the contractor will obtain consent from the subrecipient to proceed with all required abatement. The subrecipient can place NA in this box if there was no abatement required for the property. In number 19, the subrecipient should re-verify the property boundaries and ownership. In number 20, the subrecipient should ensure that all environmental hazards such as asbestos, lead paints, and other hazardous materials noted on the Hazardous Material Disclosure Certification and Environmental Review have been identified, removed, and disposed of according to regulation. For example, during the environmental review, subrecipients should perform lab tests of samples to identify asbestos, lead paint, or other hazards. The environmental review should have identified required remediation requirements based on the results. The subrecipient should document all remediation and abatement activities and document items transferred to the landfill. Once subrecipients have ensured these hazardous materials have been properly disposed of and filed, the subrecipient can initial. In number 21, the subrecipient should ensure that all household hazardous waste noted on the Hazardous Materials Disclosure Certification and Environmental Review have all been identified, removed, and disposed of according to regulation. For example, subrecipients should ensure that a virtual assessment has been performed and documented, noting all household hazardous waste, and that all hazardous waste identified in the environmental review is removed and properly disposed of. Subrecipients should file copies of all receipts of waste transferred to the landfill. Once these items have been confirmed, the subrecipient can initial. The final section of the checklist is for subrecipients to ensure that they have on file documentation that the demolition is complete and that the requirements of the contract and demolition were completed. These items can be initialed after the demolition is complete. In number 22, the subrecipient should photograph the site after demolition, demonstrating that everything has been demolished, all debris removed, and any refill and grading have been completed, and that the demolition is complete. After placing the photos in the file, the subrecipient should initial. Finally, in number 23, The subrecipient should add all additional documentation to the file that the demolition is complete and that all debris has been removed and tracked to the landfill. All landfill disposal tags should be input into the file. After ensuring the file is complete and there is evidence of demolition completion and landfill tags, the subrecipient can initial the last box. After demolition, the subrecipient should also complete the post-demolition checklist to ensure that all required details of the demolition have been completed. See the instructional video on the post-demolition checklist for more information. We hope you enjoyed this training on the pre-demolition compliance checklist. If there are any additional questions during the completion of the form, subrecipients should reach out to their General Land Office Grant Manager. Additional videos covering the other required local buyout and acquisition forms are or will soon be available at the same location you are viewing this one.